Right, can you hear me all right, everyone? Good, excellent, excellent. So what am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about top 10 things since I came away from a previous career, pivoted, the word is, from a previous career in high-tech marketing for high-tech. So this is my story. This is a little bit of a story. When Zoltan asked me to do this, I thought, what can I be an expert in? I know, it's an expert in me, so because everyone else is really probably an expert. So a bit about me. Microsoft, I've worked in big tech for about 30 years. So big tech being the likes of Microsoft, Salesforce. There was a company called Scion back in the 90s. Now Scion was the precursor to the iPhone. It was something called a clamshell. It was called a PDA. It was a small thing, the same sort of form factor as an iPhone, but it had a keyboard. You flipped it open, it had a keyboard. My MD was Harold Godin. Harold Godin then went on to start TomTom. TomTom was I think the largest IPO ever in the Dutch stock market or something like that. So that's the type of environment I've lived in and worked in for an awfully long time. One thing I must do is get my phone out and do timing, because either one or two things is going to happen. I'm either going to talk for about 10 minutes or I'm going to talk for about 50 minutes, both of which probably won't work. So, right, timer's on. Now I'm 5 minutes behind. Okay. So I was doing that. So I was marketing, big tech, Microsoft, Epson, Salesforce. My last job was at Salesforce. I was a global events director. So I did huge big conferences like here, conferences that had about 5 people in them, everything in between, talking about all very exciting things like CRM, which is just super exciting, as you can imagine. But it taught me an awful lot. And actually, one of the things I thought I'd talk to you about is sort of that transition, that mindset coming through, and then coming into this sort of world that we're in and we're talking about. So life changed in 2020. If you remember, there was a pandemic going on. I think it's sort of be vague recollection of that these days. But I also had a huge, big disruption. I found myself single for the first time in about 20 years as well. And I moved into a flat the day after lockdown in the pandemic as well, which was, a very new experience, that's to say the least. Then Salesforce took the opportunity in that summer to go, actually, let's do a bit of a reshuffle, let's do a bit of a restructure. And I found myself sitting in a room with the music's turned off and there weren't too many chairs around me to sit on. And the chairs that sort of were there were a bit boring anyway. And I'd really had enough of people complaining about tuna sandwiches and cold coffee at events as well. So I thought, you know what, I need to do something a bit different. And it was at that point, actually, a little bit before that virtual production sort of came into my world. A colleague of mine was looking at it for Salesforce. And I'll come on to this in a little bit, with the idea of sort of buying a system. So I found myself now not working for the thing I've been doing for years and years and years, and looking at the possibilities of being able to do, where am I? I forgot even to push the clicker, I'm that excited. So there's this opportunity that we got to purchase this tech as well, so virtual production tech. It was green screen, and it was everything. So we had 3 cameras, 3 Moses tracking units, green screen, ATEMs, cameras, everything really was thrown into this sort of this opportunity that we had, or they had, and I found myself not doing anything. I thought, well, this looks sort of interesting. I really enjoy being a jack of all trades. That's one of the things that you sort of get to do with marketing as well. And how hard could it really be, I thought, as well at that time. So there was a cute naivety, I think, that came along with that as well. But it wasn't totally naive, in as much as I thought, okay, so take a bit of a step back. what have you learned in your time of, being in corporate marketing and some of the challenges that come up? And one of the big challenges with any large corporate, any company these days as well, is the ability to create content. Content is really expensive to a corporate. It's very easy to spend £30,000 on a 3-minute video, and that takes 6 months to make. That is not the world we live in, right? We've got super fast content being produced constantly, and how do corporates sort of pivot towards that as well? They tried it with Twitter back in the noughties, which was a really, really interesting thing that when that came out, because Twitter was obviously, just words. But how do you control that? And PR departments throughout sort of the corporate world were trying to control these messages that were going out on this ubiquitous platform that people just came and went. And I still remember, a tweet having to go through the PR department and taking a week to sign off. And of course, by the time that got signed off, the world had moved on by a week as well. So there were sort of big benefits that we could see. We could make content. Oh, you could change the background. That's pretty cool. And as we know, sort of tech gets cheaper, it gets faster, and it gets easier to use. So I was looking through this lens and thinking, this is a disruption. This could be a disruption for sort of technology as well. How are we doing for time? I think I need to hurry up. So it could be disruptive as well for this market. So these are sort of the parameters that I was thinking through virtual production, not knowing anything about filmmaking, not knowing anything about anything really. And I thought actually I could also bring an outside perspective. One of the biggest challenges with anything that you do, that you live in a bubble and no one really comes into that bubble and actually sort of helps you work out your place in the world, especially when it's a disruptive technology as well. The other thing that really occurred to me is that if I was going to come into this world, I was never going to be, I might be an award-winning director, right? But really, I might be an award-winning producer, but really? But what I probably could do, because this was 5 years ago, if I put a huge amount of effort in, I could probably still be quite unique in as much as I'd know a lot about virtual production. So that was sort of that was the real push to be able to do it. And it also gave me a purpose, right? Purpose to get up in the morning. I found myself single and, what to do. I could watch Neighbours all day, daytime TV, etc. But, actually, why not just get up and go to work and learn something new? So that's what I did. So on the inside of that disruption, so I've sort of been doing that, and I thought, okay, so I've got this kit, right? And this kit, so as I said, it was an awful lot of money. 3 MOSIS camera tracking system. It was a render engine that had an ATEM, because it was sort of built to be a micro studio, like a broadcast studio, that you could then create all that kind of content with 3 cameras, switching, audio. We even had an accent suit. I don't know why we had an accent suit, but there was an accent suit as well. So there's an awful lot to learn. Absolutely. I mean, I didn't really quite realize how much I had to learn. And there was this big concern as well about it being a shiny thing. It was lots of people are at home, right? And there was a thing that needed to be solved, and that thing could be this shiny thing. And there was big LED walls or green screens. I think the thing that really sort of sold me on it when I saw the behind the scenes, I don't know if anyone saw the behind the scenes for the Olympics, for the BBC, where they had this sort of Tokyo Olympic studio, but they were in a green screen studio. And it's like, yeah, that's a thing, so it has to be a thing. It's still really, really shiny. And the general sort of ethos around it was, everyone should be getting into it as well. But there is still, again, so much to learn on it. And not much seemed to work, I'll be honest. Now, the technology kind of worked. How am I doing for time? The technology seemed to work-ish. The biggest challenge was working out why it didn't work, right? We used to have this sort of saying, it's like you're always one tick box away from happiness. And that was the case, because there was 1,000 tick boxes that you needed to be able to find. And as in 2000, you were on Unreal Engine, I think it was 4.26 or something like that. It was never made for virtual production. It was a hack, an absolute hack as well. Lots of walls were going up as well, which was really, really cool. But it's sort of one of these things where it's okay. From my perspective, as sort of being in tech, it's like, well, this is quite new. Why invest so much money in something that's really, really new? Surely it's going to go out date tomorrow before it's even out the factory. As things get faster, cheaper, and easier to use. I then sort of realized, being on the inside, that there was this traditional process about making films and doing broadcast that now I was in this world. And those two worlds have been doing it for an awfully long time. You know, film had been doing it for 100 years, and broadcast had been doing it for 60 years, something like that. But there was this disruption. It's kept on picking at my brain, really, where the analogy of sort of a licensed taxi driver, it's been going on for hundreds of years. You know, horse-drawn carriages. In the UK, we have something called licensed hackney carriages, where you have to know how to drive around London. You have to pass a test. It takes years and years and years to learn sometimes. And then the smart people come along and invent this thing called Uber, and you do not need to know any of that anymore, right? So it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be, do you need to know, does that process need to work and operate anymore now that this new disruptive technology has come along? Oh, and the other thing was really, what the fuck was VP? I mean, no one really, even at that stage, sort of knew what it was or could really explain it in less than, I don't know, half an hour. And there was another elephant in the room that was sort of also was nagging in my brain as well, which was, where's film going as a medium? And then I thought, well, actually, is it entertainment? Where's entertainment going as a medium? And then it was sort of even broader than that. It's sort of, where's attention? Where is the attention grabbing going actually in the future? Because these things are getting, we've got these screens in front of our faces, and you could see with children starting to use it at a very, very micro level, their attention. Where's that coming from? Yes, you can have your attention still grabbed for an hour and a half or for an entire series of something because you want to binge watch it. But likewise as well, you can sit there for an hour quite happily looking at cats playing with string, right? It's like these days it's super easy. So there is this other side, this disruptive technology is coming in, this convergence of the likes of, like gaming engines and AV systems and film and broadcast. But actually, where's that all going as well? So I'm in there. Pioneering is hard. Anyone who's actually probably sitting in here and has been working with virtual production for more than a couple of years knows how hard it is. I knew nothing, and probably a lot of people may have known a lot about something, but not about absolutely everything else as well. So there was, I don't know if I've mentioned, there was a lot to learn. Cameras, broadcast cameras, they're different. I don't know if you know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know how to turn a camera on, just to let you know. Then we had lenses I had to learn. There was lens data. I didn't know you had to learn about lens data and that macro data. Color temperatures, didn't know about color temperatures really. Pixel pitch, frame rates, didn't know about that. Screen ratios, Camera tracking, in, out, difference between what's SDI, sensor sizes, full frame, HD, UHD, 4. I could literally go on. I've only got to the line 3 of 12 lines. Some of them got Gaussian splatting, motion capture, IP networking infrastructure. I had to learn what IP addresses were and how they worked together and when they did work and the difference between 192 at the beginning of it and all sorts of things. It was quite a steep mountain. It's one of those things that when you go walking in the mountains and you go, that's a really big mountain. You get to the top of that mountain, it was hiding another really big mountain. That kind of scenario as well. There was no one to talk to. It was lockdown as well, so that was really, really tough. It's like, okay, I'm here, I'm banging my head against the wall. And the go-to, I don't know if you remember this, but the go-to a couple of years ago was something called Google. right? You literally would go to this thing called Google and you would ask it a question and it would do something else. Obviously, that changes now. If I put what is the difference between 59.97 frames per second and 60, ChatGPT would tell me instantly. That wasn't the case back then. So I didn't have anyone to talk to either about it. But there was these expectations that had been, this magic had been sold to the world, right, of these expectations. And Salesforce had been invested in this huge amount of money. And while I wasn't getting paid, there was my friend who had sort of got this money for the equipment, and it's like, okay, we've got to be able to deliver something. So they were sort of, yeah, but you sold us the magic. Where's the magic? Where's the magic? Where's the magic? It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. There was not much training. Training was delivered by a lot of the manufacturers, which of course they train you on their system, which is absolutely fine, but do they teach you how the entire thing works? I really don't know. It sort of worked. Yeah, I think I said that earlier on. Definitely it worked, but did it work? Did it work when you needed it to work? There was a huge amount of anxiety on any sort of the sets that you came to as well. There's definitely a different methodology and a mentality between building a 3D environment for a game than there is for a VP set. Number of times an entire world has turned up on a stick the day before and you put it in and actually all the viewport of the frame that anyone wants is something over there somewhere, whereas all of this sort of effort and resources have gone into building this entire world. So there was a big juxtapose around that. So much so that I wrote a manual. I thought, I've got to write all this stuff down. So I actually wrote like a 100-page manual, and absolutely everything we even touched, myself or anyone who came into it, because then that could just reference back. Anything went into this sort of documentation. So we sort of did that, which was out of date almost instantly, because the world was moving so rapidly that as soon as you sort of got anything locked down or worked anything out, the thing was out of date, which was great, right? However, there was a point of time where it became my craft, because pennies started to drop. I could work out, I could sense, and I'm sure there are people in the room as well who get this sense. You could sense what the thing that was wrong was doing, why it was doing it. And it wasn't just whether or not there was some sort of anomaly in Unreal Engine, but it had to do with, whether the frame rates were right, how to plug different cameras in, what was going on, why was something glitching, etc. Because I'd worked out that after about 3 years, I'd spent about 8,000 hours just locked in this studio. So I started to think about this. So with my 8,000 hours, I sort of would look mindlessly at the wall, wondering why this thing wasn't working, and banging my head against the wall. So through a sort of a technical, from the technical background that I had, or that side of things, it really occurred to me that it was more of an architecture than a thing. It wasn't an LED panel, and no one, if you ask anyone about virtual production, not that many people say it's an LED panel. Lots of people outside say it is, but that's what they know, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. But it is way more of an architecture in my head. The quote is, if you asked engineers to invent filmmaking, they would have invented virtual production, because that's just what you'd do. But questions like, who owns this? Who actually is responsible for this thing? Because it spans so much. It's broadcast, it's film, there's streaming, there is, there's light. Yeah, there's all these things, but it just seems to cross into every single traditional department or disrupts those departments as well. The difference between an operator who fixes and gets things work and swaps out tech and hardware when it goes wrong, versus like a head of department who has that vision about what the art of the possible is as well. So where does that fit in? It was really, really big. I mean, it was shockingly big conceptually when you start looking into it as well. It's almost like the cosmos when you start looking up and you just more and more stars more and more stuff, and add-ons. And this is then. And then the ability to say no. That was really hard because you had quite young, inexperienced crew who were being asked by quite experienced ADs who needed to know stuff, and the inexperienced hadn't maybe had the experience in order to be able to, really vocalize. When they were asked how long something would take, they'd say 5 minutes, not really quite thinking it's going to take an hour for someone to be able to do that. So just having the ability to say no was really, really challenging as well. No, you can't do that. Or yes, you can do that. Or it's going to take an hour to do that. Is that the choice you want to make? But I think the interesting thing is actually, and I think this is starting to happen now, and we saw the Masters yesterday, and there's Reese, and there's a few others as well, where you're starting to see VP natives emerging as well. They know no different, really. They've been taught for this, and they've understood it, and they've been able to play with it as well. So they've not been, a bit like me, they've not been war-torn by the fact that they have experienced what it was like back in the day, right? Making stuff the old-fashioned way. But the other question I ask myself, is it a movement? Is it like a creative movement? Once the tech's fixed, once it works, once it hums, it is joyful. Absolutely joyful. The collaboration that you can have with the craftspeople, the DOPs and the directors on set and the art department is just wonderful, where you can see the glee and you can see the creative process about lighting, about moving structures, about all sorts of things. And as soon as that clicks, it becomes this joy, which is what creativity is all about, right? But it sort of does have to work. How am I doing for time? I'm really rubbish at this.
15 minutes.
15? Loads of time. What was this one? Oh, this was, build it as they come. So it's been built, right? Now, the big IT companies do have this sort of methodology, and you fail fast, all that kind of stuff. Build it, if someone picks it up, if it works, can we sell it? Is anyone going to buy it? All that kind of stuff. So, tech company has now created this VP thing. One of the things that Microsoft went through in the noughties was this process of working out that speeds and feeds do not sell. Emotion sells, really. Trying to convince people of the benefit of something and how it makes them more successful by using it. And that's sort of something also from Salesforce as well. If you compared back in, when the iPhone came out, the two boxes, so actually there was this joke graphic that came out that was banned by anyone in Microsoft from sharing. One box was the iPhone, the brand new, literally iPhone number 1, and if Microsoft did it, there was an alternative, and it was just covered in writing. It talked about the screen size, and it talked about the RAM, and it talked about this, and it talked about that, it talked about the other. But that wasn't selling. That would never sell. And it was a very big transition that they needed to go through to understand that no one really cares about that kind of information at this sort of inspiration level. Yes, of course, underneath it, you do need to dig into those kinds of things. Just like LED panels, you do need to understand their luminosity and their pixel pictures and all this kind of stuff. But at that level, it's really important to be able to inspire people as well. So there was also this thing at Microsoft, which was they tried really, really hard to be cool. And it was literally like watching your dad dance on a wedding. It just wasn't, right? It just really, really wasn't cool. So they had to try and reinvent themselves, not to try and do that as well. So the good news, I think, is the fact that, when they come, there's some indicators that people are coming. One thing is competition. When you start to see competition, people have addressed that marketplace that other people are in, and they've gone, there's an opportunity here. And so competition starts coming up. So panel manufacturers, camera manufacturers, all of these things that VP is about, you'll start to see more and more active competition, which is great. You need competition to push yourselves also forward, to make more innovations. Starting to see a secondary market. Now, I'm not too sure whether or not we see a secondary market in VP yet, but that's something to keep an eye on as well as partner markets, so working with other people to be able to produce things that your customers or your clients want. And the other thing is an accessory market. Now, you are starting, I've definitely seen those with, I don't know if everyone's seen the Pixo rig, where you can put a vehicle on it, and you can then control it with game controllers, and this vehicle will tilt and shift and do all the kinds of things that you need it to do. It's nuts. But it is an accessory. I mean, it's an incredibly expensive accessory, but it's an accessory. They couldn't have done it without that. It's a bit like an iPhone and an app. You can have the apps, but if you've not got the iPhone, the apps is just ones and zeros, right? There's a really interesting hidden benefit that really sparked my imagination as well. Diversity. Coming from this big tech, they worked out around 2000 that their entire work base was one demographic, white middle-aged men, right? And that was for a reason. They'd come through Stanford's and through the other technical institutions. That's what a lot of white guys did, and they got employed to do development, and they got employed by being paid large amounts of money by Microsoft and other big tech companies. So they knew they had this problem. It was a really obvious problem of maths, right? If you are not being attractive to another entire gender, let alone sort of people of color as well, you've got a problem long term. So they've got to fix it. So they put an awful lot amount of work into starting to appeal to other diverse people as well. Because tech, if you look for the research, it's all over it. There is no research saying diversity is bad. Not that I've seen anyway. And the creativity side of things as well, that's exactly the same. You have different viewpoints of what creativity and storytelling is. If it's just one demographic that's driving it, guess what? You're going to get a certain amount of stories only. But VP seems to be a pivot and seems to push against that. When I think it was a shock, and I was talking to someone about this recently actually, you get used to sort of you get used to your environment, right? And working with a mixed bunch of people. And I think the first event I ever went to, when I got into VP, I walked in the room and I could not, where are the women? Where are people of color? I literally blew my head away. I felt actually consciously uncomfortable. That was how weird it really was. It was like, I don't know, it was like a convention for lawnmower owners or something, or Harley Davidson owners maybe, or something like that. But VP seems to have changed that. And I say that, I mean, looking at this room for itself, right, there's huge amounts of diversity in here. And the studio that I ran, loads of diversity as well. So there's a really interesting pivot, I think, that is sort of an unseen one, possibly, that virtual production is bringing. The way it was fixed, I think, with the likes of Microsoft, was it got people to understand how difficult it is when an individual walks into a room that is not of their, what's the word I'm trying to think for, not of their clan, not of their sort of creed. If a woman walks into a room that's full of men, there's energies that are going on there that really make that person want to turn around and walk out again. The people in that room need to understand about what that means as well. And that will cause them problems in the long term. So I think it's quite a relatively easy fix. I think the diversity also, part of this, is really around us not being as technical as we should be when people like producers, and it's not necessarily genders or ethnicity. It's just people who aren't used to being in our room with us. If we're talking all about frame rates and talking about pixel pitches and talking about all sorts of things, it's not inclusive. We need to be inclusive. We need to be able to work out how to speak the language of people who don't know. No one wants to feel like an idiot in a room. No one wants to do that because all they want to do is leave and have a bad experience. And the other really, really cool thing that I've noticed, and I'll come on to this in a minute as well, is that, of course, if you're in the developing world, all you need is this kit to have a VP studio. Now, yes, it's still a hockey stick of an investment, but in theory, as long as you've got power, right, and you've got the kit, then you've got a VP studio. So you could film in Kathmandu, you can film in Addis Ababa, you can film in anywhere. You could even move those people, to wherever the talent is as well. So it's a really, really interesting diversity angle that how am I doing? 7? Nice. I think it's about perfect, actually. Cool, brilliant, excellent, good, go me.
Over 5 questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I haven't framed that up right. The elevator pitch. Elevator pitches, probably most of you know, what you're trying to do is that you get in the elevator and you're trying to convince the other person in the elevator of something cool by the time they get out of the elevator as well. So you have to do it in a way that they will be inspired to take another action. Will you do it by explaining what virtual production is, in that technical ways that we see as well? These are quite basic. These are just ideas. LEDs are pretty pretty. Green screens are pretty boring. You can flip that around, but they're pretty cool as well. You can do an awful lot with them. But you can, if you start to reimagine the way that you pitch virtual production to people is really, really, really important. They need to be inspired. So think about it when you do that it's not trying to memorize this sort of 2-sentence or 3-sentence words of technical background, which most people outside of this room really don't quite understand. Things like convergence as well. This is my favorite word, gleeful. I think I use that the most when I think of someone who sees virtual production for the first time. And and you've experienced, I'm sure, if anyone in here has got new clients or someone coming to look at virtual production for the first time, it is like looking at an 8-year-old's face light up when this light bulb clicks above their head. And there's nothing wrong with talking about it in that language either. And this is the other one I use. This is fundamentally what it gives people. It is a creative tool. It's a creative tool that allows you to do things that you cannot do any other way, right? And that's proven by driving plates, because you can do some really weird shit with cameras with driving plates, because there's no risk. But that's really basic, but there's other things that will be invented by the smart people among us, for sure. It's flexible in as much as, we can shoot, where's the talent going to be? Oh, it's going to be in Sydney. Yeah, we can set that up in Sydney. Next week, they're going to be in Mumbai. Yep, that's fine. We've got another studio partner in Mumbai. Hugely flexible. And the agility of it, do you want to move that mountain? Yeah, change the time to keep the time of day, sunshine, we all know the analogies, but hugely agile as well, if it's done through that constraint as well. And the great phrase, fixing pre. The only problem with that, if you think about it, it says that there's a problem already. You're trying to fix something. So, it's a great phrase because it sort of puts it in mind where you're moving stuff from post-production into pre-production. But you've already set an explanation that you're trying to fix something. We're on number 9. I've got 10. This is the last but one. I'm sure you'll work that out, right? Yeah. So the VP world needed community. Another thing learning from my time in tech, that if you introduce a thing, you need people to talk about the thing. Because if you try and promote the thing with money, you will never reach the people who need to talk about it. And they need to feel free, and they need to feel the ability to be unencumbered with their conversations. They need to be in a safe space as well. There were huge amounts of silos. When I started, my silo is just me. And it really did occur to me one day that I cannot be the only person trying to work this shit out. So it's like, actually, I'm going to start reaching out to people, clever people. Because it needed it, right? It's like it absolutely needs events like this, and it needs community to be able to talk about stuff, support each other a lot, whenever, share stuff that people have done, new technologies, events that are going on. It just needs that sort of that energy behind it. On a side issue, I also sort of thought to myself, well, actually, if I get a bunch of smart people into it, I can ask them really dumb questions while I'm learning those 100 things that I need to learn as well. Why is 59.97 a thing? When I started it, I could have called it the Virtual Production Community Group, but it would have then set an expectation that it was about virtual production and what people thought virtual production is, right? Does that make sense? So I came up with sort of a bit of an androgynous name, Starting Pixel, with the idea of actually having anyone and everyone involved in it. So it wasn't just for technical people, it wasn't just for producers, it wasn't just for filmmaking, it wasn't just for broadcast, it wasn't just for it was just inquisitive people who wanted to know more, so they could share and understand and have a reference point about actually what it was as well. What it is, again, is sort of a bit organic. We started it on WhatsApp, so it's still going on WhatsApp. There's 1,300 people, I think, today, something like that, on it. Globally, 56, 70 countries, something like that. So you can sort of read by that sort of uptake, it's a thing. And that always gave me sort of energy to think, okay, well, this is worth sort of putting some energies into it as well. I've talked about the size. If you want to join, it's really, really super easy. You type startingpixel.com into your browser and you hit the join button. It's free to join. It's WhatsApp. There's loads of groups. If you want to get into digital humans, there's that. There is location capture, talking Gaussian splatting, LiDAR, photo stuff, and the other clever people, tech, I don't know, as well. There's an annual event that we do, Starting Pixel Live. That's going to be in October. We had one last year. Amazing, really, really cool event, as well as we tag on events, after parties onto events, onto sort of industry events like IBC and BTS as well. Anyway, it's all on the website. Go find it. Last slide. The art of the possible. People don't know what they don't know. That's a really, really good thing to always think about. People were not going to know about this stuff if they don't know about it. So there is a requirement of all of us to sort of also help them. They're not ignorant, they're not stupid, they just don't know. If they say it's a big LED wall, that's fine. That's what their perception of what it is to them. Think about what your sort of elevator pitch could be. No, it's magic, it's gleeful, it's going to solve so many of your problems. Although that can be a bit of an issue. The other bit of a challenge around this is the fact that scale as well. So getting people to see it is, as you've all experienced, that's the thing. You walk into the studio, you see it, you see the glee. The challenge with that is that that's not scalable. You can only have a few number of people in maybe 100 at max to come into a studio, and you would I'm on the last slide. So what we've been able to do recently is we've created a podcast in order to be able to try and get that scale. And by the fact that it's not just virtual production, it's everything sort of within virtual production. So motion capture, automated props, which I could talk about, and is going to be an amazing thing in the future. Along with color science, we've done some on color science. We're going to do some more on color science. And lighting, which of course everyone knows, or maybe you don't, the 3 rules of virtual production: lighting, lighting, lighting as well. And I think that's it. Why would you film any other way?